Welcome, everyone, to today's Explainer. I'm your professor for this session, and let me tell you, we are diving into an absolutely crucial moment in 20th century geopolitics. Close your eyes for just a second. Picture the year 1961. The whole world is basically suffocating under the immense tension of the Cold War. The power struggle between the United States and the Soviet Union wasn't just growing, it was literally dominating every single international move. Today, we're going to unpack the source material detailing the Bay of Pigs invasion. We'll dissect the strategies, the massive assumptions, and the ultimate global fallout of this event.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our syllabus for today's Explainer. 1. The Cold War context. 2. The secret American plan. 3. The Bay of Pigs invasion. 4. A mission doomed. And finally, 5. The global political fallout.
All right, starting off with Section 1, the Cold War context, focusing on tensions in the Caribbean. To really grasp 1961, we have to look at both sides of the chessboard. Down in the small Caribbean nation of Cuba, Fidel Castro's new revolutionary government had just taken power, and this brilliantly illustrates the conflicting geopolitical stakes we're dealing with here. From Washington's perspective, there was this profound, growing fear. Cuba is sitting just miles from American shores, and the U.S. saw it actively becoming an enemy state. But flip the board. From Moscow's perspective, this was a tremendous strategic opportunity. Cuba was starting to move closer to the Soviet Union. As the historical record shows us, these two totally opposing viewpoints set the stage for an almost inevitable clash.
Which brings us right to Section 2, the secret American plan and their strategy of covert action.
Now let's step into the incredibly clandestine world of American intelligence at the time. U.S. officials essentially mapped out a highly classified strategy breaking down into 3 main steps. First, recruit and train exiled fighters who had already fled Cuba. Second, provide those exact fighters with weapons, ships, and military aid. And third, launch a sudden surprise attack. So the crucial point is, the whole shebang rested on one massive assumption. The entire operation hinged on the belief that this surprise strike would spark a massive local rebellion. They expected the Cuban public to just rise up and topple their own newly formed government.
And that leads us to Section 3, the Bay of Pigs invasion, looking at the actual tactical execution.
Let's fast forward to the reality of the morning of April 1961. These exiled fighters, following that covert strategy we just outlined, actually landed on a Cuban beach known as the Bay of Pigs. And here, class, is the ultimate question we have to ask ourselves, the exact same one the strategists were banking on back then. Would the local population rebel as expected? Well, the harsh reality of history is no way, they didn't. That anticipated local support completely failed to materialize. And to make matters worse, the whole element of surprise completely lost. The Cuban army was already fully prepared and waiting for the landing forces.
That harsh reality pulls us directly into Section 4, a mission doomed, where we'll look at the anatomy of this failure.
If we chronologically trace this tactical collapse, it's pretty staggering. We start in the morning with the initial landing on the beach, but within just a few hours, the situation escalates dramatically. Heavy fighting erupts with fierce gunfire and bombings echoing all across the region. Then, shortly after, the situation in the air completely deteriorates. Several planes are actually shot down. The attacking squad is now completely surrounded. And they really held on to this false hope that the United States would step in with open, direct military support. But that support never came. In the end, these fighters were hopelessly trapped on the beach. The whole operation unraveled at just an astonishing speed.
And the costs, both human and tactical, were absolutely severe. Many soldiers were killed in action during this fierce fighting. Meanwhile, hundreds of the invading fighters were arrested and taken prisoner by Cuban forces. The historical record shows this wasn't just a mission failure, it was the complete collapse on a highly visible global stage. There was no keeping this a secret anymore. It was exposed to the entire world, which obviously caused immense damage to America's international image and invited some extremely fierce, widespread global criticism.
So we finally arrive at our last section, the global political fallout, and what this teaches us about escalation.
Let's zoom back out to the macro level for a second and look at the political reaction. This failed attack took already strained U.S.-Cuba relations and basically drove them right off a cliff. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how this catastrophic failure landed squarely on the desk of the newly elected President John F. Kennedy. Imagine being a brand new leader trying to project strength and stability during the height of the Cold War. This very public, incredibly costly failure was a massive immediate political blow.
It severely tested his administration right out of the gate.
As we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with a final thought derived straight from our source text. The Bay of Pigs invasion was not just a failed military attack, but the event that made Cold War tensions even more dangerous. That really hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? It perfectly encapsulates the profound historical lesson we need to take away from this. It shows us, with terrifying clarity, exactly how quickly political power struggles and covert strategies can spiral rapidly into major international crises. So here's something to think about. How do you think the leaders involved navigated the deep, lasting mistrust that followed an event like this? It's a fascinating question to ponder as we close the book on this particular chapter of the Cold War. Thanks for attending today's explainer class, and keep questioning the history that shapes our world.